For centuries, nations have risen and fallen. Empires have expanded, collapsed, and been forgotten. But across every age, every continent, and every government, one force has quietly shaped the fate of the world: debt. We hear the numbers all the time. The national debt is rising. Governments owe trillions. Countries are drowning in loans. But nobody stops to ask the most obvious, most unsettling question. If every country is in debt, then who is the creditor? Who is the world actually borrowing from? It sounds simple, but the answer takes us through a journey of history, money, power, and the strange system we all live inside without realizing. So today, we go back, not just decades, but centuries, to uncover the hidden financial architecture that holds the modern world together. Not dark, not depressing, just the truth, told like a forgotten chapter from an old economic journal. Walk into any marketplace, any school, any parliament, and you'll find people who can debate everything: politics, cricket, movies, inflation. But ask them, who does our country owe money to? You'll only get nervous smiles and confused guesses, because this system was designed to be invisible. Not secret, just complicated enough that nobody bothers to understand it. But here's the funny part. The system isn't evil. It isn't a conspiracy. It's simply strange. A strange machine that humanity built and forgot to switch off. And once we unpack it, you'll see why the question, who is the creditor, is actually far more fascinating than the debt itself. Let's step into a 19th century study room. Mahogany desk, dim lamp, thick books on global trade. A financial historian sits, writing a long report on the new international lending systems. Back then, the world was simpler. Governments borrowed money mostly from wealthy merchants, trading houses, royal families, powerful banks, and sometimes each other. Debt was personal. You knew exactly whose gold you carried. If Britain borrowed from the Rothschild Bank, everyone knew it. If France borrowed from Dutch traders, it was public knowledge. Debt was like a ledger in an old shop, clear, tidy, almost boring. But as the world industrialized, as railways stretched across continents, as wars became global instead of local, debt became bigger, more complicated, more abstract. And eventually, nations started borrowing from something new. Not a person, not a king, not a merchant, but an institution, a formless creditor, with no face. Here's the surprising part you won't hear in school. A huge portion of global debt is simply countries owing money to other countries. Japan lends to the US, China lends to the US lends to Europe, Europe lends to Africa, Africa borrows from Asia, Asia borrows from Europe. It's a loop, a giant circular web of lending and borrowing. It's like all the kids in a classroom lending each other lunch money and then complaining that everyone is broke. So when someone asks, who does the world owe money to? One answer is simple. The world owes money to the world. Strange? Yes. But we're barely scratching the surface. The next layer is quiet, boring to most, but incredibly powerful. Domestic banks. Most of a country's debt is actually held inside that country. For example, if India issues government bonds, who buys them? Mostly Indian banks, Indian pension funds, Indian insurance companies, Indian citizens, Indian financial institutions. Meaning, a country owes money to its own people. That's right. If you bought a government bond, your government is in debt to you. This is why countries rarely go bankrupt, because that would mean bankrupting their own citizens. So another answer to our big question is, nations owe money to their own citizens. Not scary, not mysterious, just a weird financial relationship we stop noticing. This is where things get interesting. A significant portion of global debt is owed to hedge funds, asset managers, investment firms, retirement funds, mutual funds, sovereign wealth funds. Think names like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Fidelity, Norges Bank, Temasek, GIC. These groups manage trillions. They buy national debt like people buy groceries. So a piece of US debt might be owned by a teacher's pension fund in Canada. A piece of India's debt might be owned by an insurance company in Japan. Global debt moves like water, across borders, markets, and time zones. And this leads to another surprising truth. Sometimes, the creditor is you, indirectly. If you own a mutual fund, a retirement plan, or a small investment portfolio, chances are, somewhere in the world, a government owes you money without you even realizing it. Now we enter the dramatic part, the names everybody recognizes. The IMF, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Central Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, central banks across nations. These institutions lend money during crises, for development, or for reforms. And because they're often involved when countries are struggling, people assume the IMF owns everything. No, they don't. They own a small but influential piece of global debt. Their power isn't in money. Their power is in rules. They decide who gets loans, how much, and under what conditions. In a way, they are not creditors, they are referees. This one shocks most people. The largest single holder of debt in almost every developed nation is the government itself. Yes, governments owe money to themselves. Example? The US government owes trillions to the US Federal Reserve and other internal government departments. Japan owes money to the Bank of Japan. It sounds absurd. How can a government owe money to itself? Simple. When central banks buy government bonds, that debt becomes internal. It's like lending money from one pocket to the other. Strange, but it stabilizes the system. People imagine secret elites controlling everything. Reality is far simpler. Yes, wealthy people hold some national debt, but through normal tools, bonds, funds, treasury bills, index investing, no conspiracies, just financial literacy. They don't control the system, they just understand it better than most. If every country is in debt, then who is the creditor? Simple answer, all of us. Global debt is just governments lending to governments, citizens lending to their own governments, banks lending to nations, investors lending to markets, institutions lending for development, central banks lending for stability. Debt isn't a monster, it's the global IOU system that keeps everything running. Without debt, governments stop, companies stop, innovation stops, economies freeze. Debt is messy but essential, the bloodstream of society. The world cannot go bankrupt. Why? Because the world doesn't owe money to anyone outside the world. No alien creditor, no secret empire, no cosmic landlord. The world owes money to itself. Debt isn't a hole, it's a circle. As long as money flows and people invest, the circle keeps spinning. So when you hear, the national debt is rising, countries owe trillions, don't panic. Debt isn't collapse. Debt is just society, recorded in numbers. The real creditor isn't one elite group, it's humanity itself, a chaotic, interconnected system we built together. If every country is in debt, who is the creditor? All of us, and none of us, at the same time.